what the technology, using the same exact code and the same exact technology, allows you to do is turn every product into an owned media channel. So all the data that you get from the supply chain side turns into instant and authentic content on the consumer engagement side.
I'm thrilled today to have two guests on our podcast here. You have both from Merge. First, Cindy Brown, who's the Chief Performance Officer, and the second is Keith Turco, who's the Chief Growth Officer. Cindy and Keith, you guys want to introduce yourselves and say hi?
Yes, hello, I'm Cindy Brown, so you can get used to my voice. I've been part of Merge, joined them through an acquisition of my company. I was the founder of Blue Moon Digital, and really wanted to be part of a larger organization that was doing awesome, innovative things, and found a great partner with Merge.
And I'm, as Jason said, Keith Turco, Chief Growth Officer at Merge. Most recently joined about 8 or 9 months ago, but came from a digital startup that connected individual products to people in the cloud. Before that, have spent a myriad of time in agencies and client side doing integrated marketing.
Great. Well, thank you both. Today, we want to dive into a topic that Merge and Cindy and Keith are really sort of experts around, and that's the notion of connected product. With the onset of COVID and with general digitization trends over the last decade plus, we've really seen rapid opportunities around taking historically offline, tactile brick and mortar product and bringing them to a new set of digital experiences. And with this, there's really a new set of opportunities that are unlocked. And in today's episode, we'll be diving into what that means from a strategy perspective and from a brass tacks and technology perspective as well, and talk about the opportunities that lies ahead. Before we go deep into some of the bigger strategic opportunities, Cindy, I know when we first talked about these opportunities, you had a very personal anecdote that was top of mind. So why don't we kick off with that and make it super specific and real to our listeners today?
Oh, absolutely. This was I think in the May timeframe this year. And my niece I was in New York City and I was in Soho. And my niece, who lives in Salida out in the mountains here in Colorado, was getting married in June. And so I thought, I need to buy, and I had my nice dress for the wedding, but I needed to buy something for the rehearsal dinner the night before. And as I was going through Soho, I saw Ralph Lauren's store and I thought, Ralph Lauren, perfect, look and feel for an outdoor, wonderful event. I'll go and get an outfit. So I walked into the store and I saw this beautiful skirt, kind of floral skirt, and took it to the dressing room. And so I put it on, and then I noticed in the label that it had a QR code embedded in the label, and I've never seen that. And so I thought, I know what to do with a QR code. Thank you, COVID. You taught me how to do that really well, to read a menu. So I clicked, I took a picture of the QR code, and all of a sudden it first told me it's this is an authentic garment from Ralph Lauren. And I thought, I'm in a Ralph Lauren store, so I hope so, but really, you can buy Ralph Lauren in many other retail locations. So I like that. And then it told me where it was made. And then it told me the date that it was made. And I remember my feeling was, my skirt, it's got a birthday. This is so cool. And now I'm getting brought into this. And so I scroll down and it shows me a blouse that goes really well with that. And I went, you're kidding. You're telling me, you're upselling me. There's this blouse. So I leave the dressing room and I go to the sales clerk because this skirt was not with this blouse on the mannequin. I go to the sales clerk and I said, do you have this blouse in the store? And he said, sure. And he took me to a back part of the store and he pulled out the blouse. So now I take the blouse into the dressing room, put the blouse on, and by golly, it had a QR code. So I take a picture of that QR code. Now I see my blouse and the skirt together with a belt. And it's you're kidding. This belt's perfect. So I go back out of the dressing room, find the sales clerk and say, do you have this belt by any chance here in the store? And they did. And so I'm just intrigued by this whole thing. So now I click on the belt. It's what else can you sell me? I've got a whole outfit. And this time it came up and it said, would you like to join our email address? And it was you bet. I'm entering my personal information. I am so enthralled by this whole experience that the internet, it's my clothes are connected to the internet and it is coaching me through an inspiration, an outfit that I could pull together for my niece's wedding. And it was just so fascinating. So as I'm checking out, I mean, the clerk didn't have to spend any time with me except for to go fetch me product, right? It was the QR code, the internet that was upselling me on this. And I said, this is so fascinating that you have these QR codes. And he goes, yeah, we started it a couple of years ago, but it was mainly for supply chain management to understand where inventory was, with it. And now we're learning that it can be an engaging customer touch point. And so that was just an incredible experience with that. And I knew that Keith had come from the industry of that. And so I immediately called him and he said, I said, I just spent a whole bunch of money at the Ralph Lauren store in Soho. Thank you for this technology.
So I'll add to that, Jason, if you don't mind. It was funny because right before Cindy did that, we had spent some time, she being the chief performance officer and me, the chief growth officer at Merge, talking about emerging technology, what's next, what's on the forefront. And I had spent 2+ years at the technology company that actually is the technology behind Ralph Lauren's connected products. It's a company called Everything, but there are several others that are out there that are in the same space. They create digital twins in the cloud, and it's called a product cloud. Once Cindy left the store and scanned the product, they knew that she purchased it. So now they know that Cindy owns that shirt, that belt, and that skirt. So they can now start tracking share of closet, but also they can treat her as the loyal customer that she is in the rightful way that marketers like to treat customers, and brands like Ralph Lauren like to treat customers based on that. And Cindy's 100% correct. That company in particular, Ralph Lauren, did it from a supply chain and authentication perspective. And what the technology, using the same exact code and the same exact technology, allows you to do is turn every product into an owned media channel. So all the data that you get from the supply chain side turns into instant and authentic content on the consumer engagement side. And you can, the transparency from the brands is fantastic. There are a slew of other apparel and consumer product goods brands that have started moving into this space as well.
Yeah, no, the strategy is fascinating. The example is just fantastic. And when I sort of hear about Cindy, your experience, there's some pretty obvious key benefits that you really just imply a much larger set of strategic opportunities. The first is just bridging the digital experience to an offline experience. 5 years ago, no one would think you'd go into a fitting room and your iPhone would play such a critical role in that experience. The second 2 points, which Keith, which you brought about are look, not only are you creating a customer experience, but for a brand like Ralph Lauren, which might have a very hard time otherwise, if you're in a department store, establishing a one-on-one relationship with the customer, and even just things like establishing opt-in with that example you gave around asking for your email. This is a transformative opportunity for brands that historically are disintermediated from their customers at some levels, with a lot of these new digital channels as well. And then finally, you think about the data strategy behind it. Suddenly, not only does Ralph Lauren have visibility in what you bought, but also they have visibility in everything you tried on, which opens up a whole new set of opportunities to really understand the customer, and then bridging that to everything else to transform the experience.
To add to your second point, Jason, the collection of first-party data, which we know is paramount this year as we transition to a cookieless society, so to speak, and with rules and regulations coming in on third-party versus first-party data. So, Ralph Lauren aside, but any of the brands that are doing this have an opportunity to use their product as an owned media channel to engage with customers, collect first-party data, and have a deeper and authentic relationship with them. Yeah, no,
100%. You're going to say something to me?
Well, there was another brand too that I love. It's Another Tomorrow. And they took it even to an incredible extreme. So in addition to as brands, the manufacturer brands are dealing with, I need to get more first party data. That the sustainability is a huge issue, and especially like in apparel, where it's like, where did this material come from? How do I care for it? Where was it made? And I've got a beautiful suit from Another Tomorrow, and it tells me the provenance. And it goes to the point saying, this merino wool came from this family farm in New Zealand. Then it left New Zealand and it was sent to Italy, where the weavers put together this cloth. Then it traveled here for the designer to cut it out. And I'm going, oh my gosh, now I appreciate the value of this suit, that it had to go through so many steps for it to be hanging on, a hanger for me to select. And it just, I will be a loyal, brand buyer from Another Tomorrow, just because I know everything that went into this, and better yet, I also got the care instructions. So it's like, now I know how to care for it too. And in this case, another thing that, that they do at Another Tomorrow is that I can resell it back to them. Now it's like, I had no idea that I had so many options, and that I'm communicating with the brand directly as it's walking me through my journey. And so to me, it's so fascinating to do that, because I really do think, as the world continues to change and change and change, there is a lot of, what we all hope to do as marketers is that we really build up loyalty. And I think it is just a terrific way to build that kind of loyalty.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, it's tremendously exciting is to think through the opportunities in front of us. And, one thing that I think is really important to put out there is look, while these technologies have been around for quite some time.
Right.
I promised that before we got to record the episode, I do a tiny bit of research, and I did. I'll present that in a second. But what's really transformative is look, with COVID in particular, and people's aversions, now to touching anything, seeing this on menus at restaurants, seeing this in new contexts, it was really opened this up as a new standard. Which even 3 years ago, I think people would have thought, was sort of cute, but not widely adopted. And actually the roots of the QR code, were invented in 1994, for automobile manufacturing processes. So cataloging, all the things that are required, to assemble your vehicle, and having those systems that can, find another sort of window rocker switch or whatever it is that, the tens of thousands of parts that go into your Toyota or whatnot. And it's interesting, Keith, you sort of recounting, the roots of the business and the history, behind the Ralph Lauren example. They're in manufacturing and logistics and operations. Now there's a completely new set of opportunities in front of us that are around the customer experience, around direct-to-consumer marketing, that are really just completely transformative.
I think you said it perfectly, Jason. I think it's we talk about it as consumer engagement, but now it's consumer experience, right? So how are we delivering experiences with the brand digitally during and post-COVID, now that there's wide adoption of QR codes? I think the one point I'd like to make is that the QR codes that we're talking about are serialized QR codes. So they're unique QR codes for each garment or product item that's out there. So you'll have the SKU level data embedded in it, but what you get from a serialized QR code is the fact that it's the exact blouse that Cindy purchased, or belt or skirt that Cindy purchased. And we know once Cindy registers that exact skirt belongs to her. So, number 47 in a lot of 150,000. And that's how they can also authenticate and make sure that things are authentic and tell you where the fabric came from, because certain manufacturers might source fabric or wool or anything from different farms around the world. So Cindy's came from New Zealand, but there might be another one that came from China. And do you want to purchase or not, cotton that was produced in China? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. You can also look at the manufacturing plant, and does it practice child labor laws? Does it practice sustainability, as Cindy said? Is it a LEED certified organization? Those kinds of things that can come through absolutely when you scan certain things. So the supply chain data turns into content, as I said before.
Yeah, but I think a word, Cindy, that you used when we last spoke was, this idea of a digital twin.
Yes.
I think what's interesting, Keith, just hearing you speak is look, while I may go and shop for a sweater, and to me they all look the same. In fact, they're not. And especially as you get into more luxury upscale brands, into other categories like liquors and wines and whatnot, there's some very, very interesting applications here.
Absolutely. I think you also touched on the upscale brands and or expensive items. Even Ralph, right? It's Purple Line, which has quite expensive items that you want to make sure are authentic when you purchase. And there was a story done, I think Richard Kestenbaum wrote it, I think it was in Forbes, I bought a Gucci bag on the RealReal and it was fake, and I spent $3,500 on it, right? So these, as Cindy said, I know that tomorrow allows you to sell back your item, right? So it may be on the secondary market, and also authenticating when you're purchasing a used or slightly used item will be critical in the future as well.
And the part that I really love is that because it's a QR code and it's going to a page, right? I can keep that page updated, right? So it's not, so it's like my product is, is set. However, I can go to a page and learn a lot more, right? And you just think of that kind of possibility is that it's always fresh. And it doesn't cost me. I don't have to reprint that QSR code. I don't have to do these things. I just need to go change the page and make sure it's updated. So it gives a brand so much more reuse of that. And it's just it's exciting to think of all the use cases. We had a team and we wrote together, all the different ways you could use the QR code. And like you said, it's a basic technology that's been around for a long, long time. But because it's connected to the internet, it's like I can change things and keep it updated, add to it. It's just an awesome technology for getting that first party data.
Jason, one additional point, and then I'll stop talking. But QR codes are prevalent because of COVID and because they're very affordable. But you can do this with an NFC tag, which is also very prevalent now because of contactless purchasing, right? So using your iPhone or Android to pay and just waving, right? Which is near field communications or NFC. You can use RFID. You can use watermarks. You can use anything. We tend to talk about QR codes because they're very prevalent in the world, but there are certain technology companies that are pretty agnostic when it comes to which tags you want to use. So as you could imagine, a high-end item where you can potentially copy and do stuff. But if you go into a store, pick a brand, Gucci or something, and they just wave their handheld over it and they can authenticate it in a minute because there's an embedded NFC tag somewhere. It's really kind of cool. And then the customer experience, which is what Cindy, always brings us back to, is unbelievable because the feeling of, okay, the product I just spent $3,000 on is authentic. And what else, the brand just validated it for me, which definitely speaks volumes to the brand relationship and the loyalty that you want to have, whether it's new and or slightly used or remarketed, so to speak. But tons of things you can do from a consumer experience perspective that we've transitioned to post-COVID now.
Yeah, no, two great points. I mean, it's funny, being a New York City resident, post-COVID, they installed NFC readers to use your phone, in Apple Pay or whatever the Google counterpart is, to just swipe on the turnstile and walk right in. It's pretty amazing. And as those kinds of experiences become more commonplace, consumers and the technologies will shift. And NFC is a much more powerful protocol than lo-fi 2D barcodes that you need to use your camera, and everyone knows the logistics. But I think for me, when I sort of think about our customers at Simon Data and really some of the value from a data perspective, there's a very tight interplay between the customer experience and the data. If the brand is able to provide a compelling reason to come back to scan the code again, and to understand what related garments might look like, or understand what the secondary market might be as available, or understand how to get recommendations, of things that match, the consumer will come back. And when the consumer comes back, it's a very strong signal to the brand, around intent. It's a very strong signal to the brand around how they engage and and where they go in their direction of their journey. And this data is data that for that today brands have zero visibility on. Because experience doesn't exist. But as you think about these transformative experiences, not only is it a great experience on its own, but it creates an entirely new data asset that can be used in many other ways. To think about high level innovation, and also just think about tactics around messaging and further engagement downstream.
I couldn't agree more. I think there's some other use cases. We're talking about apparel and garments, but think about potential use as a recycling vehicle for bottles, or fluorescent lights. Where do I take this, right? So if there's a code on the light, and the manufacturer of the fluorescent light can actually say, this was scanned, brought to a recycling plant and recycled, I can get sustainability credit against that as a brand, right? But also the experience that you're giving the customer of ease of use from a recycling perspective, or, the 5-cent bottles that we've got here in New York, and obviously a slew of other states. How do I scan it, and how can I then drop it in a bin, get the nickel virtually, potentially, right? And then the brand gets credit for a bottle that's been recycled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 times. Again, reducing their carbon offset and everything else. So the experience you're giving the consumer is fantastic. It's no longer, collecting my 50 bottles once a month and going to the supermarket and putting them in a machine and getting, $2.50 or something from it. But you can automate all of that stuff, and ease of use, loyalty, and brand perception, and what it means for a consumer to interact with brands like that is fantastic.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, just the opportunity that, that this technology, puts in front of so many brands today is sort of, it's hard to really just put our finger on in our short, 20-something minute, episode today. But maybe just concluding with the final question, as you guys talk with brands who are looking to get into QR codes and getting into connected devices more broadly, what are some of the top 2 or 3 considerations that they should be asking from the onset around as they go to set their strategy?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what their needs are, because it depends upon the kind of product. I mean, I was just thinking about all the ways, you could use the QSR code. I just recently, I can't remember what device it was, but it's like, where's the manual to this machine? I need to figure something out, right? And it's like, I hate collecting paper. I hate stacking this stuff up, So I would think the first thing you would have to do is figure out, where the pain points are, and then all of a sudden realize you have this incredible technology to take advantage of. But I would always, I just, as a brand, I always lean towards to the customer journey. And I think you have to start thinking about, well, what are all the touch points with this customer? And as Keith said, this is like a whole, distribution. You've got so much power now in your product that's distributed everywhere. And so I really would like to look at consumer product goods, and how can I build a relationship with my customers and show them how they can use the product a lot more. Would be huge, but I think it does require strategy. And if Keith and I could probably come up with 45 use cases between the 2 of us. It's like, well, let's pick the top 3, of how you have an impact. But when I talk about digital transformation and accelerating digital transformation, I always start with your customer relationship first. That's where you start.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think this is really where technology has enabled us to go, because we were having this conversation 5 years ago, would be around support and operations, logistics. You call up support, my widget is broken. Well, take out your phone, scan the QR code, follow all these unwieldy steps. Today people see a QR code, they know what to do, and opens up a new set of opportunities. So tremendously exciting. Final question before we close out, and Keith, you're welcome to answer this as well, but I know Cindy has an answer prepared.
Sure.
If you guys were to have this conversation again with anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
Well, I have to admit, I am in love with Kendall Jackson Chardonnay. So I would like to have this with Barbara Benke, who she and her husband started the Kendall Jackson Vineyard. And I love Kendall Jackson for the flavor, but I've also, because it's available everywhere. It's economic. I can get a good bottle of Chardonnay for $15. But there's so much more to Kendall Jackson. If I had a QR code that told me I could join their wine club. Oh, by the way, we have all these other premium, Kendall Jackson brands that you should try, and they could, get me to explore. I could find recipes, that's with this. But if it's serialized, I could also say, drink it by this date, don't let it sit in your in your wine cellar too long, or your refrigerator too long. So I just think that to me, we were talking about luxury products, and then we talked about light bulbs. But I'm just saying, even with a bottle of wine, there's a relationship that you can develop and have and communicate to your customers and let them explore the rest of your product line and what you do. So I would love to sit down with Barbara and say, you are an innovator. You brought a great California vineyard to life. Help us innovate, the wine industry to this next level.
To add to that, Cindy mentioned before the consumer packaged good industry, which obviously you can count that as one of them. But I'd love to talk to the Unilevers, Reckitt Benckiser's, Procter & Gamble's of the world from a consumer loyalty, consumer experience perspective. Sustainability, provenance, and authenticity to me are critical even in those spaces, right? Buying skincare products, are they real? Are they not? Amazon did do a study, I think of 2,000 products, and 100% of the cosmetic products that were purchased on Amazon were not authentic. So if you think about that, you're putting something essentially into your body or on your skin that you may be allergic to. So lots of consumer experience things that you can talk to consumer packaged goods companies about. But sustainability, buying the refill bottle versus buying the new bottle, and refilling and doing certain stuff like that. Consumer experience, loyalty, lifetime value, all those things come to mind.
Yeah, that's great. So closing out, thank you both for coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom with us. You're really reflecting back on the conversation. It's ultimately about combination of technology disruption, and consumer behaviors and expectations. And I think, when the examples alone, I think for me, just make the case around the disruption that lies ahead, for brands that are really forward thinking and adopting opportunities around connected products. And whether today it be the QR code or tomorrow be NFC or other technologies, I think we're just going to see a lot more of this as digitization continues, and as the technology adoption continues, and as folks who are creative and looking to really redefine their brands, adopt the stuff. It's very exciting from my perspective. So with this, Cindy and Keith, for folks who want to learn more about Merge, how can they learn more about what you guys do?
You can visit our website at mergeworld.com, or you can reach out to me or Cindy, and it's our email address is our first initial last name at mergeworld.com. So Keith Turco at mergeworld.com. Would love to chat with you.
Love to chat with you.
Great. Well, thank you both, and thank you to everyone listening to this episode of the Data Unlocked podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Simon Data, please visit us on the web at simondata.com or email us at hello@simondata.com.